About, and Anthony, I'm going to do you dirty real quick.
I'll go for it.
But you know, we talked about running the first play for Mobley,
Yeah.
getting him more involved early so he feels more comfortable the rest of the show.
You get Anthony involved.
Yeah, Anthony, we're going to start with you.
Oh, go for it.
The Browns have a lot of holes to fill this offseason, my man.
I didn't make a list last night.
You did not make a list because you did not expect to be here. But, hey,
No.
we're going to get you involved early. If the Browns were to sign one player this offseason, just one, who would you want them to go after the most?
I don't have any names, but I do think we need a wide receiver. I think we need somebody who has speed that can replace Shorts because I don't think he's coming back. Like, I don't think there's any hope for him to improve. I don't think we can't use him. I think we need to replace him. That's my number one list in that behind defensive tackle.
Schwartz is still on the team?
He's still on the team last I heard.
Hey, Earl, let's make sure we write that down and clip that for Anthony. Let's get his first social clip up on his first hot take.
You mean he's technically still on the team?
For now.
Technically.
Us Anthonys have to stick together, but at some point you just got to give it up.
I've been there too. I'm on the roster, but I have no anticipation of coming back here.
Schwartz's tap card's not working to get into the system. It's been cut yet.
The checks are still coming to a date.
Yeah.
So technically I'm still on the team.
Yeah.
So the Browns do have a ton of needs. I think we all agree defensive tackle's a need.
Absolutely.
Wide receivers a need. I think there are linebackers out there who make a lot of sense for this team. Wide receivers, which we're going to talk about. And we want to hear from you guys. So when Anthony steps out of this chair and goes to the back, put in the YouTube comments who you want to see the Browns go after the most. Give me one guy and one position. So whether it's one player and or one position that needs to be addressed. And defensive tackle's the obvious number one here, I think. Not obvious, but I think at least that's what I'm going to say. I know that's what Earl's going to say when we get to it. Defensive tackle is your number one position in free agency you'd like them to address?
There's no doubt. I think that we have to shore up this defensive line. I mean, I think that was the thing that was really – I mean, we could have probably won 2 or 3 more games if we had just solidified that.
Just been halfway confident.
Just been right here,
yeah,
right?
Just halfway
So
confident.
those 2 or 3 games, probably we had a chance to probably slide into the playoffs, probably.
Yeah.
So I think that has to be shored up. And I think – I'm not worried so much about the wide receiver. You got quality wide receivers in college now. I think that's an easy steal. If somebody knows how to do their homework, right? I think that if you're down in the weeds and figure out exactly where quality receivers are coming from, you should be able to come up with something, right? Here, I'll turn to my own alma mater. Ohio State seems to be producing a slew of wide receivers, right? And they all get slept on until they get to the NFL. Then you're like, where did this dude come from?
Yeah, I think there are some interesting options at the receiver position in free agency. We're going to talk about those guys in a little bit here. But to Brad's point, wide receivers now come out of college, really come out of high school into college and
ready
contribute
to go
immediately. They come out of college to the NFL, ready to contribute immediately. Look at Jamar Chase.
Mm-hmm.
Look at Justin Jefferson. Mm-hmm. Look at Drake London this year. Look at Garrett Wilson with the Jets. I mean, these guys are coming in. I mean, 3 Ohio State guys in the last – Jamison Williams, who started his career at
You saw him come
Ohio
back
State.
in Detroit. He, like, blazing again.
Already. So I do think in the second, third round there are receiver options, which is why I would look elsewhere in free agency as my number one need. And like I said, we're going to talk about all these in a sec. I saw something real quick on the draft yesterday. We're supposed to have Dane Brugler from The Athletic on yesterday. He had to drop out last minute. He's going to come on next week with us now. He had Jalen Hyatt ranked as his 9th best receiver in this class. Now, Jalen Hyatt's a guy out of Tennessee who was one of the best receivers in the league. I'm not sure if he won the Biletnikoff Award, but he was one of the finalists, I know. And he's a guy with Haslam as the owner, has those Tennessee ties. We've all looked at as, if he's there in the second round, that's the guy you got to take. Well, if he's not even a top 8-9 receiver, they're going to have options in that second or third round to pick up a really quality receiver later in the draft. And I'm excited to see how Berry, Podesta, Stefanski, Haslam kind of attack this entire offseason knowing they have so many different positions to fill.
Well, here's the thing. You have so many different positions to fill. There's no excuse that you don't fill them.
Yeah.
Again, it goes down to, I believe, scouting staff, who knows what they're looking at. And some of the people you're looking at, I don't pay attention to who won the awards. That's hearsay to a point because it's based on somebody's opinion. I need somebody to know what they're looking at, right?
Yep.
And I can say, whether you won an award or not, you can play.
Yeah.
It's like if I was doing high school basketball, it's like the McDonald's list, right?
I have a whole issue
You
with
got
that
people on the McDonald's list that couldn't play dead at a funeral, right? But somehow they end up in this game.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not about that. It's about knowing with these two things here, show you and tell you, because that's where the Browns are. The Browns need real help right now on a multitude of levels, and I think all the levels that they need can be filled if somebody knows constructively what we're doing and what the goals are.
And we're going to find out really soon if Andrew Berry is a lucky GM or a talented talent evaluator.
Exactly.
Because he hit on some late-round picks this year, and from year to year, that's not always the case. You're going to hit on some, you're going to miss on some, but the best always hit in those mid-rounds. We've seen the Bengals do that year after year, which is how their roster is top to bottom so talented, despite the fact they haven't really paid anyone major money yet in free agency. Trey Hendrickson is their biggest free agent signing in 3 years, and you look at that roster, and they're going to have to pay Burrow. They're going to have to pay Chase, Higgins. But they've done such a good job filling the middle of that
other
roster
guys
with third, fourth, fifth round picks. I want to bring Earl in on this. Earl, we made a wish list yesterday, and yours and mine were a little different. So where do you think their number one target in free agency needs to be, position-wise first?
I think mine's is defensive tackle. I would love to have a Deron Payne. We've already talked about it, how more likely than not the Washington Commanders is going to hit him with the franchise tag. Javon Hargrave seems like the more realistic option, and I like Dalvin Tomlinson from Minnesota. I think you got to shore up the interior of that defensive line. You know, Shorts talked about a system being what it is and generating pressure with the front four. We already know that that's the weakest position group. I do think he'll be able to coach the young guys up that's on the team, but you still need to be able to add a guy that's an impact player right away.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I do think Washington's going to end up franchising Payne.
Yeah.
You don't let guys who are that talented, that young, walk for nothing. But one of the things we're not missing, but I think one other benefit of shoring up the interior of the defensive line is not only does it help with the run game, but you could have a tackle that commands at least a chip block from a center, which unleashes Miles to go one-on-one on the outside. And we had Teresa Walker on Tuesday talk about how Schwartz gets the best out of his outside pass rushers and gets pressure. And there's Jason speeding into the parking lot. That was like the flash coming through the window.
Anthony hasn't said anything in 10 minutes. I got to get in there.
Oh, I'm passing it to you next. I'm sending it to you. But if you get a Hargrave, if you get a Dalvin Tomlinson, if you get one of those free agents, there's a guy from Kansas City, Nomedy, who I really like on the defensive line too. That's just going to help unlock Miles on the outside to hopefully get in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year, which he was snubbed. Snub's a tough word because three guys.
You're not snubbed. I mean, the team was awful, right? How you gonna be Defensive Player of the Year and the team was awful?
Because I mean, he did. You look at the
because if you're the
metrics,
Defensive Player of the Year, that means you've lifted up the team.
Fair,
right?
Fair. His numbers do stay though when you look at top to bottom.
It's not just the numbers. This is not a numbers game. This is
that's
about
the age-old debate.
I'm not saying he should win. I'm saying he has a case to be in that top three.
He's a quality player. There's no question. One of the best. You're not the player of the league. Listen, you don't see no player of the leagues coming from Northwestern, do you?
But it's not defensive
They
MVP.
don't.
It's just the best defensive player of the year.
You can't be.
I'm not saying he should win it. I just think he has a case to be in that.
There's no
three.
case to be made.
There's a case
Win
to
some
be made.
games and there's a case to be made.
I think you got to be a playoff team to be a
You
candidate.
got to be.
You're
devaluing
Anthony,
everything else.
Yeah, let me get this
point,
question
what's
in
up?
before Jason takes my spot.
Yeah.
And this might be a dumb question.
you about
as
to get
someone
bumped,
who's
but-
not.
And Jason's inside.
But
So
do you focus more on shoring up for the run, or do you want someone who can help Miles get pressured? Which do you go after first? What's the priority?
Well,
there?
I think you need first to shore up the middle.
Where'd he go?
Shore up the middle. Don't worry about it. You still got time.
you're gonna get a question and an answer.
Yeah,
Perfect.
You need to shore up the middle. I think that unleashes Miles. The other thing is that the people don't say, you're losing. You're going to lose Clowney.
Clowney's gone.
So
Yeah, he's not bad.
So who's coming off the other edge? Right. So it's two ways. Last time I saw you was there with Tressel last night.
Can we get a round of
Have a
applause
seat.
here for Mr. Jason Lloyd?
That's how we do it. That's all right. This is how it is. This is what happens when people are
Jay
sick.
got hit by a car and made it before Jason got in
People
here.
get sick, right? Last minute call in. So shout out to my man
Jason was
Lloyd.
supposed to be here today. But he was doing something special. He gets a pass.
I had an appointment this morning that ran really late, and there was nothing I could do about it.
You're a team player.
So I apologize.
You're a team player.
No.
And thank you to the nice officer on 71 who let me
So
go.
let you go.
I showed him the show, I'm like, I gotta go! And he understood, and here I am.
Well, Jason, let's open this up to you now. We're talking about free agent wish lists. Biggest free agent needs for the Browns this year.
Yeah, there you go.
Anthony said wide receiver. Brad, myself, and Earl all said defensive tackle. Do you agree that defensive tackle in free agency is the number one position the Browns, if they're going to make a splash, should make a splash in?
Yeah, I think they'll probably wind up using their second rounder on a receiver. I think I think I said this the other day. First and second round guys, I think, can make an immediate impact on the field. at the receiver position. Third round and after, it gets a little bit more developmental. We saw it with David Bell. It didn't really make that much of an impact. They need someone right away. So, I think that we're a little bit early on the whole free agency thing because we don't know what teams are going to do in terms of re-signing their own guys. Deron Payne, a guy from Washington, defensive tackle, that's at the top of my list. A big, beefy guy who can fill the middle.
He's young, though, right? So, but
Payne's very young.
I'd say this: the chance you get a young guy is slim to none.
Well, right now he's a free agent. Washington will probably re-sign him.
They'll put the money up, right? So you got to think like that. What I'm looking for is somebody that gets cut, waived, released, that might be serviceable for a minute. I need to find a real solution. I'm not sure I'm going to find that solution where I'm drafting from or anything else. Is where I think I need to be.
Well, you don't have a first.
Right.
The second round pick. You know, they definitely need a defensive end and probably 2 defensive tackles. And we've seen them turn over the defensive tackle room twice now. It was the Malik's 2 years ago, Malik Jackson, Malik McDowell. Last year, obviously, or this past year, Jordan Elliott, Taven Bryan. Some of these guys are going to be back. Guys that disappointed you, they're going to be back.
You can't replace everybody.
No, you cannot. But
and the hope is with Jim Schwartz, with a year of development, you get more out of them, especially a guy like Jordan Elliott. Now, is he going to be the starter, and is he going to play as many snaps next year? I don't know. I would like to see another new defensive tackle or two, but Jordan Elliott's going to be on this roster next year. Taven Bryan may not be.
I can't bank on that thing. Here, give me a guy that has
Javon Hargrave.
Give me a guy that has done something out here, right? And he may be long in the tooth, right? Disregarded by the team he was from. I just need you to help me shore this thing up, right? I just do.
Well, that's the Malik Jackson route.
Well, but
I
tell you what's here. Listen, we had. Remember when we had Ogunjobi here?
I hated.
Oh, come on now.
I hated to see Larry.
But see, nobody had any. They couldn't understand the value of what he was doing there, right?
I would be thrilled if Larry Ogunjobi was back on this team. I would take him back in a second.
He's a free agent. I mean,
and he's bounced around a little bit. Cincinnati to Pittsburgh. He's staying in the division.
Like, come on back here, dog. We need you back here, right?
Good friends with Miles. Him and Miles are close.
I said, this is what I'm talking about. You have to. The people now running the organization. I saw a bunch of them last night at the Sports Awards dinner, right? Somebody here, you're gonna get in the weeds here. I mean, you're in the lab now. You're in the chemistry lab here. Yeah. You got to make this thing work here. You got to figure out how to do it. Yeah. Somebody should be sleeping at night. They should be up every night, 3 o'clock in the morning. Let me figure out who's reading every paper, every wire list, who's thinking about getting waived, right?
Yeah.
Who knows who, right? You know the deal.
Oh, yeah.
This is how we construct a team.
Yeah, so we've all heard now defensive tackle's #1 guy. If Payne hits the free agency market,
he's going to get paid. He's going to get a lot of money.
Someone's going to pay him. I do think Washington ends up franchise tagging him and then working out a
He probably
deal.
stays there.
He's
on the wish list.
Yeah. Washington is on the edge of something here. Did you see them?
And you don't let
you're not walking away from here.
Especially one with that much talent, that much production.
He's a first-round pick. They're invested in him.
The fan base in Washington will not allow you to walk away, right? They're not.
The one thing you got to consider, though, and I don't know if it's exactly apples to apples, but Daniel Snyder, their owner, is going through a lot of stuff.
Right.
Does he want to spend another boatload of money on a player for a team that he may not actually be in control of
he
in a
might
couple
not be
of years?
around.
But.
So listen, I'm just saying where we are, right? I agree to your second point. The second round, I'll find you a wide receiver.
Yeah.
Yes, I can.
I mean, George Pickens was the second-round pick.
Yeah, I'll find you one.
He had a lot of T. Higgins second-round pick.
But again,
you can find a really impact receiver.
Again, it requires somebody to know what they're looking at. Right?
And we're going to get into, like I said, we're supposed to have Dane Brugler on Wednesday.
He's terrific.
He had to reschedule. He's the athletics draft guy. He's going to come back on with us next week.
Because I would tell you, even with David Bell, I'm a Big Ten guy. I don't remember David Bell.
Big Ten receiver of the year. Beat out all those Ohio State dudes.
I don't remember him blazing it up on us, right?
Well,
he's a possession guy with a lot of catches.
Here.
He was their only option on offense.
Blazing it up. There's a difference.
Yeah.
It's true. And speaking of blazing receivers, though, there are some other positions that have some depth that I think the Browns will be interested in. I think linebacker is another massive need for this team as they continue to build this defense, especially how Schwartz wants to run it and mobilize that 4-3. If you look at any Schwartz defense, they've always had a roaming linebacker side to side. Edmonds in Buffalo is a free agent, but Levante David's the one from Tampa Bay who I'm looking at, who if Brady doesn't come back to Tampa Bay, they may break that all the way down and kind of start a rebuild. David out of Nebraska, he's on his 3rd contract. He's not young anymore, but that dude moves side to side and is always around the football as tackles are being made. He's a guy I think would thrive playing in a Jim Schwartz defense behind a defensive line that contains Myles Garrett and hopefully some of the other guys on that list. Thoughts on Levante possibly being that veteran linebacker they bring in?
Yeah, possibly. I think they'll look at Anthony Walker at bringing him back if he's healthy. Taki gave him something in the middle that they didn't have before. I think he was better in the middle than he was on the outside.
Agreed.
So the front four to me is more pressing than the linebacking need. I think I mentioned before I talked to some players who felt like they need a thumper at linebacker. They need one guy who can come in and thump. And I don't know if they have that guy.
It's not Reggie Ragland. I love
it. It is not Reggie
but
Ragland.
It's not Reggie Ragland.
No, it's not Reggie Ragland. So, Alex Wright is a guy getting back to the line. I think he can help. Like, I saw enough out of him. I kind of liked him. We've talked about him before on this show. It was a big leap going from UAB into the NFL. I don't know that they would feel comfortable starting him on the outside opposite Miles. I think that's another route that they'll probably go to free agency to find someone, because it's not going to be Jadeveon Clowney. He's played his last snap. He's not.
I mean, you heard Joe Thomas make a joke about him last
Yeah, that
was good.
Great Cleveland Sports Awards. As soon as Joe Thomas is busting your balls in a Cleveland award event like that, you ain't coming
You're
back.
done.
Like, you're done.
Nor should he be back.
Agreed. I mean, he had 2 sacks this year. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
He had 2 sacks.
So that, I think, is a free agent route, certainly, that you're going to go to find someone other than a trade, if you make a trade. But I don't know. Most defensive ends, you're not going to find. Like, listen, Jerron Payne is on my wish list, but top-end defensive tackles and defensive ends get paid. Yeah. They're like starting pitching in baseball. Once you have it, you hold on to it. So you're not going to get a premier guy in free agency. You're looking for another Clowney type who's at the end of his career, who's got a year or 2 left.
They got Clowney off year, right? And Clowney, he was off injured when we signed him. And when he came here, he was it wasn't a make good, but it was like a make good, like show me what you got, right? That's how Clowney got.
Well, there's a reason why he's on a different team every year.
Right. So you're in that market again, because we don't have the luxury of saying unlimited checkbook here. We just signing everybody. Right. That's not it.
Can I throw my 2 cents in here?
Go ahead.
Please.
So everybody's talking about the top tier splash guys, and those is cool. But what y'all think about a guy like Sheldon Rankins? That's a free agent defensive tackle from New York. Or a guy like Devin Bush, who's 24 years old.
I like Devin Bush.
In Pittsburgh. But DJ Shark at wide receiver. Mike, I was telling you, he's tall, he's fast. We're talking about a guy who can take a top off without costing you a lot of money. What about those 3 guys?
So I would say this to you, Earl. This is what I would say. First of all, when I'm evaluating talent, take the money out the equation. I'm looking at basically your skill level, right? Because people always get confused with the money and the skill level, trying to equalize them. They're not. The money comes into place. It depends on what kind of leverage I have against you. So you have to set that to the side. That's just a business side.
2 different conversations.
2 different conversations. Get to who your skill level. Now, Devin Bush, I'm not a Michigan man.
Oh, really?
No, at
Shocker.
all.
Was not aware of that, Brad.
But I knew who Devin Bush was at Michigan. I knew who he was in this league.
Yeah.
Didn't the Steelers trade up to draft him at 10 in the first round? Didn't they move up in the draft to get him?
Devin Bush was a problem at Michigan, right? So you're looking for players like that have a motor. They have an engine. They're like, okay. And then I really was looking for somebody to say, oh, I got something to prove out here. Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna give you a lane. Here it is, right? So that's what I'm looking for. That's why I said that it all goes down to who is doing the scouting, who's in the weeds, because you have to know the backdrop on these people. What's the story? Do they have a motor? Yeah. Are they willing to come in here and work? Are they hungry?
Are they coachable?
Are they thirsty?
Are they team players?
Right? Yeah. You gotta know all the details, Jason.
Yeah. I like DJ Shark, but I just think they're going to go the draft route. I don't think they're bringing in multiple guys. I think it's probably 1. I think they're going to stick with DPJ, stick with Amari, stick with David Bell, stick with Njoku.
And Jakeem Grant's still on the roster.
Jakeem Grant, that's a loss that never gets talked about.
And we should talk about that more. Even though Ford was fine, and I'll give him a fine in the return game as a kick returner. Yeah. He was solid. I mean, I think his longest was 39 yards. Jakeem Grant was an elite return man, and they lost that element. DPJ had a punt return touchdown. He turned out to be fine. But, that's what Jakeem Grant was as good as anyone in the league at.
That's why they identified him early in free agency, and that was his role, is to be a punt returner. They knew that was the position that they needed to upgrade. He was supposed to be the return specialist, who's also a speed guy, can give you something on the offensive side. He's not going to be a feature receiver,
right?
But he can give you something offensively, and they lost him early in camp. And he's just sort of been the forgotten guy, and what a difference he could have made.
Jason, what's the story on Smith and Jigba? Where is he ranked at in here?
Oh, he'll be a first rounder.
Yeah,
he's
early,
going to the first round.
late.
I seen a mock draft where Philly drafted him with the last pick in the first round.
I think he'll go higher than that.
Oh my God! If you put in Smith and Jigba with Devonta Smith and
It could be
Devontae
dangerous.
Smith and
A.J. Brown.
and A.J. Brown, that's stupid.
I think he'll go higher. If he was going to be that low, he would have come back.
I agree.
You know, if he's that low in the end of the first round to where he may fall into the second,
these kids,
he would have come back and played.
These kids nowadays, they don't care. See, no, you talking about like my era. You measured where you were going, right? Because there were different segments of how much money you were going to get, right? These kids nowadays, and this is not just men, the women too, when they go, they don't be even paying attention to what this looks like, what slots look like.
I think they still look. I think they still pay.
Some of them just jump in to be jumping in because they were happy going in the second round.
But so you think if he was going to be a second rounder, that he still would have sat the entire year?
Yeah, that's
if
not,
he thought going in he'd have been a second rounder.
Give you a case
I think
of
your
what?
premise is right, but he did sit out because he knew he was going to.
Absolutely.
Who's the guy from Ohio State men's basketball last year that got hurt down in New Orleans?
Malachi.
No.
Oh,
Did he get drafted
Liddell.
out of the Pacers?
EJ Liddell.
EJ Liddell. EJ Liddell, right? EJ Liddell, this was my case I'm making to you. EJ Liddell was not going to be a first round draft choice. He knew that.
Yeah.
He still went in. I sat there like, why would you do that?
Well, I mean, Michael Redd did that years ago.
Yeah, but
knowing he wasn't going to be a first rounder.
well,
Basketball's a little different than
he
football.
He lucked into it, right? He had a good career on it, but he lucked into it.
I'm just saying, Smith and Jigma is an elite player who willingly, listen, I don't care how bad the hamstring was, it didn't cost him the whole year. He chose to sit.
Yeah.
And if there was any question about if he was going to be a first, and maybe I'll be dead wrong, maybe he'll go in the second round. But I think he knew he was a lock to go in the first round. I think he's going higher than that. We can ask Dane Brugler.
Brugler had him higher in his.
Yeah, I think he's going a lot higher than that. I think he's locked in as a first round pick, and that's why he sat.
One name to watch if they do go the free agency wide receiver, by the way. I was scrolling through every list I could find yesterday.
What was it?
McCole Hardman from Kansas City, who has missed some time with injuries. Another guy who's been a little injury prone. But you talk about a speed threat, a speed receiver who can make a difference. Next to Amari Cooper, next to DPJ, who just brings a completely different skill set than what those two guys have already. It's McCole Hardman, who, by the way, scored a touchdown in each of his final 5 games he played for the Chiefs this year. He's not back from his, I think it's a hamstring injury or hip injury, but Kansas City does a good job as any team in the league at finding creative ways to put ball in their playmakers' hands, whether it's reverses, screen passes, trick plays. They did the ring around the Rosie play to score a touchdown. I mean, no one draws up better plays than Andy Reid in that regard. And you put Hardman on the outside, you can move DPJ Cooper around into the slot, out of the slot, go for wide. I just think he fits skill set wise really nicely with what they currently have, and I don't think he's going to be too expensive because he's not a former first-round pick. He's a second-round pick out of Georgia, so comes from a power program like I know you like, Brad, that has a different skill set than the current guys they already have on the roster. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah. I like Hunter Renfrow on that list.
He obviously has a relationship with Watson.
Obviously has a relationship with Watson dating back to college. There's a familiarity there. Listen, Deshaun Watson's going to have a vote.
There's no question.
In which way they go.
Let me ask you a question about Renfrow, though. Are you worried that Renfrow, Cooper, DPJ would be the slowest trio of receivers in the history of the NFL?
Well, unless it's DeAndre Hopkins, and then that would be the slow. Like, he's slower than Hop is slower than Renfrow, I think. Yeah, that is a concern. They need someone, and that's again why I think they're going to go the draft route to find that receiver. I think all these are nice names to talk about. Yeah. I think that second round pick is probably targeted as a receiver.
Well, I'm going to tell you that the one thing that you actually said here is I think spot on. Watson's going to have a say here.
Oh yeah.
Because Watson, for all I know, Watson could be in the locker room in the offices saying, "Man, I can't throw to them." It's going to happen with these dudes.
Yeah.
These dudes.
And if you're paying them as much as you're paying them, what Watson says is going to go.
If Deshaun walks in and says, "Go get me Hop," Hop's going to be on this team.
Yep.
Couple things real quick before we bring DeQuell in. Jason, you struck a nerve. What do you all think about Michael Woods? I think he's probably 1 or 2 seasons away, but I think the dude has a lot of potential.
Yeah, I agree. I think he showed something to make you want to see more. A late round project type pick, though.
7th round pick, right?
Yeah, 6, maybe 7. Maybe it was 7. I don't know. It all runs together down there. But I think that they saw enough out of him that they want him around. Like, I think he's 100% on this team next year, but I don't think he's ready for a feature role.
I think any guy like that, Earl, when they flash potential, it's great to keep them in the rotation. But when you expect something from them on a week-to-week basis this early in their career, you're going to be disappointed more often than
we are not in that position. We're in a position where we have immediate field needs that need to be filled, and you better
too.
fill them, right?
Yeah.
And if you want to do a wait and see, hope and come strategy, good luck to you, right? Because your window on the other people are closing.
All right, so before we bring DeQuell in, shout out to the UCSS chat. So we asked, who is on your Cleveland Browns free agency wish list? Darren Payne led the entire poll with 57% of it. Other was 21%, followed by Javon Hargrave and Dalvin Tomlinson. Now we bring in DeQuell Jackson.